GameMarx.
Everyone, it's been a while, but I am back. I've got my mic, my coffee, my Andy DeFranco t-shirt. Let's do this. All right, everyone, welcome back to the show. Housekeeping right up front. This is probably going to be the last podcast for a little bit. I have some medical procedures that are going to involve cutting all the teeth out of my mouth. So I probably won't be talking much for a bit, and that will probably preclude me recording any kind of Let's Plays or podcasts or anything like that. So I wanted to go ahead and get one in before that happened next week and effectively shuts me down. I don't want to start with the negative. I got some negative news. Negative news. It's a GameMarx podcast. Negative news. But I want to start off with some positive stuff here. Unity. So Unity went free for iOS and Android development. Formerly, these were $400 plugins. If you got the Unity 3 free that weekend that Unity went free, you could upgrade to either of those plugins for $125 a piece. I was actually looking at that myself. But yeah, so Unity Basic and all the set of Unity Basic plugins are essentially free now, and announcements that Windows Phone 8 and BlackBerry 10, believe it or not, there will be a BlackBerry 10 plugin, proof that you could just throw Unity money and they will support your hardware. Those will also launch free as well when they come out. Now, there are Pro versions of each one of these, so you could still step up to Unity Pro, iOS Pro, Android Pro as you need. And there's still the caveat is if your company is grossing more than $100,000 in a year, I believe they ask that you buy a Pro license at that point and that you're not good for indie. I believe that's the cutoff level. Check that if you think you're in the case. But in which case, the Pro license is $1,500. I don't know off the top of my head what the Pro is for the plugins as well. But if you're making $100,000, $1,500 for your tool set does not sound like such a raw deal there. And they're not taking a cut like Unreal does. I've said that multiple times on the show. I like Unity conceptually a lot better because they don't get into a royalty cut system that the Unreal license does get into. So speaking of Unity, I've become a fan. I recently used Unity in the Ludum Dare, where I entered a game I called Quest and made it in 48 hours. So I had only used Unity for a week prior to entering the contest. I used it for about a week, did some tutorials online. I got myself up to speed basically on the interface is really all I grasped. Went to the East Coast Gaming Conference, came back, and that weekend I had planned it for months as my weekend to enter the Ludum Dare contest. And, not too bad. I think, let's see, is my scores on here? Yeah. I ranked out of the, oh geez, what was it? Competition only games. Let me fact check here on the podcast. 1,610. So 1,610 games. My audio ranked 183. Not bad. My fun ranked 485. Basically most of mine placed in the 500s. Decent placing, my innovation being my lowest score, which I have no qualms against because I pretty much even did in my blog post and recaps that I don't feel I did any kind of clever innovation at all. I played it safe, and I basically did a 3D version of the Atari Adventure game. It is online. You can play it because I use the Unity engine means I can publish to the web. In fact, my game actually has web, OS X, Linux, and Windows binaries, all available for download. You can also download the source, which is required for the contest. It is not open source, so you can download the source and take a look, but I did not release the source to it. I don't know what I'm going to do, if anything, with this in the future, and usually if I don't do anything with it, then I'll throw it up at some point on Bitbucket and just slap an open source license on it and say, have at it if you want it. Everything in the game I created, all the music, all the art, all the assets, and almost everything that I created within Unity. So I didn't use any modeling tools or texturing tools or things like that. I used paint.net in a few places for screenshots. I'm sorry, for menu screens. But that's pretty much it. I pretty much stuck with, like, I really want to learn Unity and do everything within Unity that I can, down to creating my 3D models from Unity primitives. Unity primitives that are available in there, and using Unity's own create texture material tools in there, just to kind of get an understanding of, you know, every step of the way how it worked. But also, since the theme of the Ludum Dare was minimalism, I took that, since I wasn't doing it in the concept of game minimalism, I took that on my tool set of, hey, I will be minimalist and pretty much just use this one tool and see what I can accomplish with it. And I'm fairly proud of what I did turn out. Not saying that this is a great game by any stretch of the imaginations, or outside of Ludum Dare contests, it even stands on its own as interesting. But what I could do in 48 hours just sitting down and cranking it out, I'm really impressed. Total of actual 23 hours development time. I made a time-lapse video. If you get on the Ludum Dare site and you click around a little bit, you can find my journal blog on that site where I have all that stuff linked in. And I will probably do Unity, I'll probably do Ludum Dare in the future with Unity again. I just had a good, fun time. And right now, with all the stuff going on, and I don't have the time to sit down and start like a larger game project, or I've been avoiding starting a larger game project because I'm worried about the time commitment. Cranking out a game in a weekend seems to just scratch that itch of just, hey, I feel like I'm still involved in, I'm still learning games, and I'm still putting things out, and I'm still improving as a game designer, you know, doing these micro projects. So, I recommend that to you as well. If you don't have the time, or even if you're bogged down in a massive game project, man, take a weekend, crank out a game. You don't need a Ludum Dare going on. You know, it's fun to do it with a bunch of other people, but, you know, just crank a game out in a weekend. Just do it in a weekend. Do it. Crank out a game, sit down, design it, launch it, put it up on the web, do that. So all this said, I have to profess a great love for Unity. I know a lot of you out there that listen to GameMarx, you are XNA developers, ex-XNA developers, and you know, you're kind of wondering, you know, what the hell do I do now? Because, you know, XNA is all intents and purposes is dead. You know, there's no XNA 5 coming. It's gone. And you're looking at it like, do I fucking go back to C, and soak up some DirectX? Well, if you go Unity, you can stay C#. You can even use Visual Studio if you want. And with a little cash, you can buy a plugin that'll allow you to debug in Visual Studio. By default, if you want to debug into scripts, you use MonoDevelop. Now, this really means that you're using the Visual Studio as pretty much a text editor with some nice color coding and fine references features. But I found the integration to be okay, and the debugging of sorts that I needed to do was not the kind that I couldn't just work around it myself. You know, that I couldn't just, I've spilled my coffee. Talking and drinking at the same time is not recommended. Alright. So, the debugging that I did in Unity basically just revolved around needing to see what some variables are, or tweaking some variables and things like that. And Unity has a pretty awesome little thing to allow you to modify a lot of things at runtime. So in your IDE, and I think this is the killer feature of Unity if you haven't launched Unity or even played with it. The killer feature of Unity is being able to run the game at the same time you're manipulating the game. Not to the extent to where you can change code. I don't believe you can get that far where you can actually change script, but you can definitely change variables. So you can expose variables and tweak them at runtime to find exactly what kind of speed do you want this monster running at, how high does it make sense to make this jump. You can move and position objects on 3D space, and closing that loop between the time it takes for you to design it and the time it takes for you to run and test it, shortening that time really in software in general. I believe that is the secret. That is the tool, the power that the pros know, that isn't stressed on enough. If you can shorten that time between writing it and running it so that you can get feedback on what you've written is doing what you're expecting it on, and it's almost effortless, you can be a lot faster in your development and do a lot more things because you're not having to wait on things to build or compile or deploy to a platform. And Unity definitely provides that, and I've fallen in love with it. It is going to be my tool going forward. It's going to be Unity. I have gone out and purchased a Unity 2D toolkit. I should probably make a note real quick to make a link to that. Real quick here, 2D toolkit. If you Google that, you'll find it. But the Unity 2D toolkit is a plugin. I think I picked it up for $45. It goes for like $80 regular, $75-$80 regular. And this is a collection of tools to allow you to do 2D inside of Unity, because Unity is only a 3D platform natively. It does have some 2D methods, but those are designed for your user interface, your menus. Those are not giving you the performance that you need to do a 2D game. Now, so basically what you would do if you're going to do 2D in Unity is, you create a plane object, and then you create a material and you apply it to it and you manipulate that material on that object. This is really what, even XNA is doing for you. I'm sorry, there's no more 2D. 2D's gone, doesn't exist anymore. You're doing 3D whether or not you realize it in your framework, because that's just the way the graphics cards are optimized now. And to take advantage of that, you're going to be drawing all your stuff to a plane in 3D space to get any kind of performance out of the tool. So the 2D toolkit comes in, and it doesn't take over Unity. It doesn't replace Unity here. What it does is it allows some new options and scripts and references and little helper widgets inside of Unity to make 2D easier. So I recommend what you do is you do Unity 3D first, then you go do some of your own 2D in Unity, and you kind of learn, follow some of the guides on Unity's own blogs and stuff like that for how to do 2D in Unity. A little bit, just so you kind of feel where the pain points are, and then you will understand where the 2D toolkit fits in. It comes at you expecting you to understand Unity, so there's no tutorial of like from 0 to 2D toolkit. It is from experienced Unity dev to experienced Unity dev with some 2D experience to, hey, now I will show you how we solved these problems. So, but that's enough Unity love, I think, for the podcast in this episode. Going forward, it's definitely going to be my tool of choice. I mean, it freaking runs on everything, and it's free on everything now. If Microsoft, I'll get into this a little bit later, but if Microsoft, going forward, PlayStation, going forward, Nintendo going forward, Sony going forward, if they're not giving indies access to their platforms with Unity, I leave them behind. The ability to hit Windows, Mac, and Linux, and to hit web is too great of a feature. Also, when you toss in iOS and Android, those are the big revenue platforms for indies. Those are your access to your Humble bundles. Those are your Steam points. That's where the money's made right now for indies for the most part, without a publisher that are self-publishing. And until you get those publishing deals as an indie, if you're still in that tier, that's just too great to give up. And if you're doing it for fun, do it for fun. Have no problem. Release on, the Windows Phone and have fun in a closed platform with XNA. That's what Windows Phone still is right now at the moment. And, just, or Surface RT or something, and DirectX 11 or 10 or whatever the hell it's at now. And, do it for fun. If you're trying to make some kind of revenue off of it, you need to step back and say, I got to be business about this, and I got to be oriented, and Unity is a hard thing to pass up at the moment. So definitely, and you know what? Even if you're doing it for fun, take a look at Unity, because I had more fun in Unity than I've had in a long time cranking out a game. All right, that's enough for Unity. Let's talk about Nintendo. So, what did Nintendo do? Nintendo, you know this because I've talked about it on our show, and I've talked about it in a couple other places. They took down one of my Let's Plays of me and my 10 and 13-year-old daughter playing the original NES Legend of Zelda. So this turned out to be us caught into a larger swath of what Nintendo's doing. Of basically, Nintendo has signed a contract with YouTube now in February. They made an agreement with Google and got access to the back end, put a bunch of their content in there from ID matching, and then started claiming ads on anything Nintendo. Anything and everything Nintendo, Let's Plays, whatever, even some Machinima posts, which supposedly Machinima has contracts for everything that they put up, that they actually seek an agreement on that. So Nintendo went out and they attempted to do all this, and it got known that they were doing this not just to us. It didn't happen just to us, but it was happening to all kinds of Let's Players, from the unheard ofers like GameMarx. We got like 10 views. Come on, man! Like, we were unheard of. To ones that have hundreds of thousands that actually can make an amount of revenue. Interesting fact that shook out of this was that for every 1,000 views, you can count on about $2.50 of revenue. So, yeah, it is possible to make some money doing Let's Plays for some of these popular channels. Of course, they are like everything, right? Like games. You can't look at them as being like the common one. It's like, no, they broke apart, they got their formula, they put their effort into it, they do their editing, they do their promotion. They put a lot of time and energy into getting it to the point where, Two Best Friends Play or Game Grumps, also those guys have swaths and swaths of content before they got into their own Let's Play channels. Anyway, long story short, Nintendo starts claiming ad revenue on all these. So let's explain how the process works. You put a video up. Nintendo goes in and they claim it is their content, and they claim the ad revenue. Google, YouTube do not review at any step of the process anything between you and Nintendo. The entire process takes place between you and Nintendo. There is no third party. That is important to note. At that point, you can say, I'm sorry, but I reject your claim. This is fair use, right? So I have taken your video, I've taken your game, and yes, your assets are used in the game. If you use a fair use defense, you have said that I have copied your material. That's what you're saying, okay? I have under the copyright law, I have made a copy of your material. However, it is within the fair use grounds. Now, fair use, it is important to understand, is a defense, not a right. So you can't automatically say this is obviously fair use. You can say that, but you can't say that legally, right? It is a defense, and to this date, no one has brought up in a court of law and challenged whether or not a Let's Play, a gameplay with commentary, constitutes fair use, and what degrees should be considered. If you just did gameplay, that might still be fair use. You might say that, well, the thing that I copied is a video game. A video does not allow you to play the video game, so I have only copied a portion, not the full thing. That's a valid statement, right? It's not a video game on YouTube. It is a video on YouTube. I haven't copied anything more than necessary. That's one of the axes for fair use. Adding commentary to it makes it critique, makes it more transformative, adds more to it, and these also help your fair use defense. So, now things that don't help your fair use defense, of course, are monetizing it. If you do it for nonprofit, or if you do it for educational purposes, that helps your fair use defense. But just because it's not educational or it is for profit doesn't automatically throw out your right to claim it as fair use. And it also becomes a slippery slope, because then you have to start to draw the line as to, well, reviews are clearly fair use and held up in courts that, no, I can use snippets and bits of your content when I am critiquing it for a review. And then it becomes a problem of what is a review and what is just somebody, just a blogger, just a guy on YouTube. And, the funny place here is that it actually leans stronger in the Let's Players, because a number of people, have said, like, Let's Plays are a strong influence on to buy the game or not. Maybe not so much on the AAA titles, but definitely on the indie titles. Tons of indie developers have talked about getting covered in a Let's Play boost sales dramatically. So there's a lot of grounds to say that it is fair use. But I think the important takeaway is that you cannot say for certain whether it is or isn't fair use. You can't legally say that this is one way or the other. You can have an opinion, but neither side can be correct here, because, it's a defense. It has to be tested in the court of law. So you can't say Nintendo are evil or wrong. I'm sorry, you can say they're evil. You can't say they're wrong, and neither can you say the Let's Players are wrong. Neither can you say either ones are right. This is an important thing to take away that gets lost in this discussion. Okay, so then after you tell Nintendo, hey, no, this is fair use. This is my reasons. This is fair use. Sorry. Meanwhile, Nintendo's getting all the ad revenue while you're going through this process. So you are guilty until proven innocent in YouTube's system, okay? Nintendo can then reject your rejection, in which case then you can appeal their rejection of your rejection, okay? So at this point, you really aren't doing much more than just saying, no, Nintendo, I'm not joking here. This shit is fair use. Back the fuck off. At that point, now this is recent, and this is something I think YouTube finally, they need to come in here and they definitely need to fix this process. For one, I don't think when a video is under dispute, either party should be entitled to the ad revenue. I think the ad revenue should go into an unclaimed bucket, and at the end of all options, whatever's in the bucket goes to the party that ended up with the proper claim. So as long as it's disputed, and as long as it's disputed within time windows, there should be time boxes in all of this, I think the ad revenue should not be going to either party. But it is going to Nintendo at this moment, which is unfortunate. So, and I also believe that they can claim a certain amount of back portion through YouTube as well, and I don't think you get that if you overturn it, or they don't, they accept your appeal, or they give up on it. So when you appeal their rejection of your rejection, the thing that YouTube changed around the beginning of the year is now they must actually file a Digital Millennium Copyright Notice, a DMCA takedown notice. This is good because at this point it becomes a legal matter in which you, the content producer, the guy uploading the content, have legal options that must be obeyed. In theory. I'll loop around back to that. So, when a DMCA notice is sent, your video goes down. This is what happened to us. Our video goes down. Now, unfortunately, at this point, YouTube put a strike on our account. This means I can no longer upload videos longer than 15 minutes. This means GameMarx is shut down. One strike, we're fucking out. That's why videos stopped for a while we fought this process. It also means I have no choice but to fight the process, because if I don't, I have to wait 6 months to be able to ever post a video again. And at that pace, I might as well give up. If any child channel goes dark for 6 months, they're dead. So, what we do is, we then send a DMCA counter notice. Now, this is a legally binding document, of which I sign under good faith that my video is fair use. The DMCA law is fucked up in many places. One of the places it's fucked up on is that Nintendo did not have to enter a good faith agreement that they aren't fucking around if they find out, like, hey, no, you don't own the copyright to this. Nintendo could send copyright takedown notice for, let's say, Halo. they are not under the law going to be published for something so blatantly egregious. But if you defend a blatant cam rip of a movie, then you face stiffer penalties than if your video just stayed down. Okay? So, I go ahead and do this. So we don't have a choice, and at this point, Nintendo's only option is they have, I believe it's 10 business days. YouTube will say, like, your video will be back up in 10 to 14 days. But I believe it's 10 business days under DMCA to sue me. That's right. Enter a lawsuit. When I file my DMCA counter notice, I have to provide to them all of my personal information, my address, and everything, because they have to sue me in my local circuit court district, which is, hey, that's a nice thing, right? Because the last thing I want to do is, like, have to file like some weird lawsuit out of Seattle or worse, like, hey, we're moving this to Japan. Well, fuck that. So Nintendo has to sue me in my local court areas. Basically, Nintendo has to pack up, come to Knoxville, Tennessee with its lawyers, and enter a case with an intent to sue. And at this point, this is scary shit. I mean, this is scary shit, right? You're giving Nintendo all your information. The only option they have to keep this video down that they have claimed rights to multiple times now is to sue you. It's important to note that no one has ever been sued on YouTube under a DMCA takedown process. That's right. It's never happened. No one under any of the egregious things that have happened that have then sent their counter notices have actually wound up with a lawsuit. Doesn't mean you won't be first, but if you get yourself into this, I am going to link you right now here to the EFF's guide to takedown notices on YouTube, and what you should do if it happens, and what you're at risk of. You are at risk of some shit. Okay, you can't be the first, you can get sued, it can get ugly. In copyright law, it is common, right? Of course, you sue for damages, and in our case, it'd be like, the video had 10 views. There's no money to take, right? Nobody watched it, it's going to be hard to take damages down. But it is common to be able for the winning side to then claim their fees for their lawyers, which I'm pretty sure Nintendo's lawyers are expensive enough that it's going to really fucking hurt for me. So, that makes it pretty risky, if you go into a copyright lawsuit situation. Especially, if, like, even, winning doesn't guarantee your fees are covered, but losing might guarantee you're paying the other guy's fees. So please check the EFF, if you find yourself in the situation. All of this said, my non-legal personal thought is, if Nintendo, which they did not sue us, and our video went back up and our strike went away on our account, if Nintendo is not willing to enter lawsuits over this, then it's just a bunch of smoke, and challenge the shit, and you will be able to monetize your videos again. The thing when the video goes back up under the Digital Millennium copyright notice is they can no longer take down that video again with any process. That video goes up and stays up. When they let those 10 days expire, the only way they could get it taken down is to sue in court, and then win in court, and then have it taken down. So without that step, that video is supposedly protected. Now, I said supposedly, and I said I'd loop back around to something. Google has signed contracts, UMG is one of them, with certain companies that even if they go through the DMCA takedown notice process and you get it back up under your rights, Google has a contract with certain companies to take it back down just because. I think this is technically illegal under the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, and it should void YouTube's protections of safe harbor. Because if they're not following the law of the Digital Millennium Copyright Act as laid out, they should not get the safe harbor protections, which basically means you can't sue YouTube for the content on YouTube. Okay? You have to sue the person who posted it. they get that protection for following the process outlined by the Digital Millennium Copyright Act. If they don't follow that process, if they allow to enter sub-agreements with these big content holders to keep videos down that have even been restored under the law, they should lose that protection. So I hope that shakes out. I hope somebody does enter a lawsuit on that, and that does get a little interesting, because that is some dirty pull there, and should not be taken down. So that's what all happened. If you're under Let's Plays, that's what's going on. Now, YouTube is kind of funny about the wording around whether or not you can monetize Let's Plays in their agreement, if you read their terms of use. But it's like everybody's monetizing their Let's Plays all over the place. So it's like they're saying one thing and doing another. YouTube really needs to fucking clean up their act and be clear and then enforce their own policies, I think. For the record, we've never monetized any of our Let's Plays to date. Not saying that we wouldn't ever do it, but to date, it's been a hobby and it's been for fun. So we haven't put any ads up, and I just find it offensive that Nintendo would come in and the time that we spent editing and producing it, thinking they get a cut to it. I don't want you running ads, so I don't want you watching ads, having to sit through an ad on YouTube to watch our content. Because, we don't have enough views to justify that. So, I also don't think that Nintendo gets, I don't believe that they get rights to claim this, 100%. It's not as if the ad revenue is split. A lot of fucking time goes into producing these. A lot of time goes into editing the videos, to fixing the audio, to recording the videos, to investing in the equipment. So, I'm sorry, you can't just 100% say it has to be for free. I'm not going to stand by that. So, in YouTube system, it's either all or nothing, so then I will say it's nothing for Nintendo. Alright, let's talk about Xbox One for a bit. Polygon has a good recap. I'm not going to get into a heavy recap of everything that was announced. You should know this if you're a fan of GameMarx, if you're listening to the podcast. And if not, go read the Polygon article and go catch yourselves up. What was revealed? Basically, they revealed hardware specs. What I find interesting on the hardware is they have pretty much parity with Sony on specs. You can have nerd arguments of faster RAM or this or that, but I think what is interesting is the fast switching and the implication that the Xbox One is running 3 operating systems and doing some virtualization. That shit's not for free. That doesn't happen for free, so I do wonder, out of those 8 gigs on the Xbox, what is left for games versus out of the 8 gigs on the PlayStation 4, what is left for games? And is it a significant split, how that will break out? I am kind of curious about that. I think at the end of the day, it's not going to matter too much. I think that's something that your engines, your Unreal and everything, it may just came down to, your game on Xbox texture pops a little bit more, or might have some lower far resolution maps than the PS4. I don't think it's going to impact it either in any meaningful way. I think they basically both came out, as much as they want to say, like, oh, we're so much better than a PC. They're pretty much PC architecture with some optimizations of being able to run the same RAM for video and, have a combined architecture of GPU and CPU, and video access is shared between them both, allowing some of that to happen. But the way PCs are going with the multi-cores and, somebody was talking the other day, and it's like, they've got 32 gigs in their system of RAM. I don't see it, 8 gigs on a video card, not that uncommon, especially not in a couple of years, and not in the lifetime of these consoles. So, in terms of hardware, I'm going to give an edge to Sony, not because of the, in terms of announced hardware. There may be some secret bits still on the Xbox they haven't talked about, but in terms of announced hardware, I'm going to give the edge to Sony, not for CPUs, not for how many teraflops of data, polygons it can push, or speeds of RAM, but for the dedicated H.264 encoder on it and the live DRM sharing abilities. I said this on a podcast a while back, but I think what consoles need to do is do something PCs cannot. And right now, live streaming, easy live streaming for the masses, one button push live streaming, not easy. I just talked about all these Let's Plays, not easy to produce. Sony bakes that in the hardware and does some intelligent defaults and makes it easy with the camera to just, cam yourself and put that into the shot and post it to YouTube or Twitch or wherever they end up going, or Ustream, I think is a partner they announced. They do this right. They get the services lined up behind it and they get the features in it, and it may go through some iterations. I think they have something over PC. I think they have a community that will find them, that will be very strong. And, just like YouTube has a lot of people who post videos, this is self-aware at the moment, but post videos of themselves talking for other friends to watch videos of themselves talking. There will be a community around people watching each other's Let's Plays, and the ability to dial in and watch each other streaming games and things like that, and even the jump in and controlling aspects. I think Sony's onto something. I think that is a new and novel feature that's going to be hard to replicate on a PC because of the number of platforms and configurations and software you have to set up to get all that working, and security considerations and everything. I think Sony has something. What Xbox went after is the TV support, which sounded a lot like the PlayStation 3 of, it only does everything. It's like, hey, we got a Blu-ray player and we can change channels and look at all this stuff. Now, I'm concerned that a lot of this is a myth. My concern is that the Xbox One did not have a cable card input. It did not have a TV tuner input. It had an HDMI pass-through. And it also had a set of IR outs on it, which means like this thing may have to connect with some IR blasters, little things that you dongle in front of your cable box, like the TiVo did, in like 1999 and 2000. That's not tightly integrated support. I think for all their TV announcements, what was missing for me was a list of, and we've partnered with Comcast and Time Warner and Dish and DirecTV, and we'll work with all these partners out of the box. So I know a lot of people were kind of looking at it like, oh, this is great. You can have your sports and your fantasy teams. But if your fantasy team works only with ESPN.com and doesn't work with Yahoo fantasy teams, it's kind of a non-starter for many, many people. And I worry because they didn't have the partners lined up when they announced this, that they're not going to have that. And if they don't have this, and they end up, the thing is that you don't want to end up as an expensive Roku. You don't want to end up as an Apple TV box, because those things are sub $100, right? And the Xbox to be under $100, that's crazy talk. It's not going to happen. It might happen with a subsidized model, but even then, you're like, Roku or Apple TV don't make me enter a contract. So, also, Google TV just tried this. Like, the whole thing that Xbox is trying to do, Google TV just tried to do this and got nowhere with it. So, they can have another swing at this, but enhanced television so far has not found a market. Okay? There may not, in fact, be a market for this, right? This may be a solution in search of a problem issue. And, it sounds great on paper and it looks great in demos. I'm left skeptical that it's going to be able to execute on that front. Now, all the game stuff, they said, hey, let's, we'll talk at E3. They unfortunately just showed some Electronic Arts, like, hey, we'll have AAA published, Call of Duty will be here. And it's like, well, no shit. Why did you bother saying that? No one doubted that. Whereas Sony brought out a parade of indies. And it also turned the discussion to Xbox as to what the indie support is going to be. This got all over the place. Man, Microsoft doesn't know what the fuck it's doing, okay? The marketing is all over the place. Everybody has a different story. You can say that, hey, people are just jumping to conclusions, but people are, the basis of all the things that people are getting up in arms and around are statements that Microsoft made. There's things that somebody at Microsoft who should know stated. There are official Twitter accounts and Xbox executives who, in interviews with mainstreaming press like Wired and Polygon, made statements that then later got retracted. So you can't blame people for the reaction because Microsoft said these things. These were not wild speculations. Whereas on Sony's side, Sony has just like, hey, we're not commenting on that yet, and left it at that. And people have speculated what that could mean based on the information out there. In Microsoft's case, Microsoft said something. They went out there. They told you this, and then they said, no, it's not that. And then they called it, potential scenarios and all that. So, what were the big ones on this? Well, the first big one here, of course, is independent games, which seems to have ended up now at, we're going to have an independent creator program looking for weird and unique games. There's been statements of there will be no indies without a publisher. Have been made. There have been statements of we are going to no longer have multiple marketplaces. There will be just the games channel. You would just get everything in the one games section, and it will no longer be segregated, which sounds like a good thing on the surface, but then it also, like, you couple that with no publishing means no Xbox Live indie games, right? And that's what people are after. You killed XNA. It is not a far leap if you look at these other things that you said that there is no self-publishing on the Xbox. There's been a bunch of articles about, is indies good or bad? And the problem with all these articles is that the line blurs when they start talking indies. Bastion and Braid and Limbo are in one category, and Cthulhu Saves the World is in another, okay? Self-publishing versus having a publisher is a distinction that should be looked at when you start reading these articles. Because if they're saying like, hey, we published and had no problem with, Charlie Murder and James Silva. It's like, he's had a great time with Dishwasher and Charlie Murder. But he's also not publishing these self-publishing. He's publishing these through Microsoft Studios. So his experience really isn't Microsoft Xbox. His experience is working with Microsoft Studios, and he's had a good time. Jonathan Blow, Team Meat, not so much, right? These aren't problems plaguing the Xbox Live indie game developer. That's first world problems almost. To the Xbox Live indie game developer, those are champagne problems and caviar dreams. Sorry, these aren't our issues. So, I'm not optimistic that there will be something about indies revealed at E3. I think they're going to be a bunch of E3 stuff come out. They have their message set that they want to give, and again, it's not going to be the message that are going to answer the question that people want to answer, because I go back to Microsoft doesn't know what the fuck it's doing. I don't think these policies have been set, and that's the problem. There is a lot of internal power struggling, I believe, going on at Microsoft. This is my speculation from the outside. But looking at the way that the phone, the Surface tablets, Windows 8, look at the way that all these things recently have launched. I don't think it's out of the realm of speculation of they don't have their shit in order over there. And a house divided cannot stand. So I expect more of a freak show at E3 from Microsoft, and Microsoft going to bring it more bad press is what's going to come out of E3, and Sony does seem to have its shit together a little bit better in terms of their message, and right now it's not hard for Sony to look good. All they really have to do is shut up and let Microsoft dig its own grave, which Microsoft seems to have no problem. So was the other big controversial thing that came out used games, because this thing ranges from everywhere from no used game support to you must pay a small fee for used games to you must pay a fee equal to buying the game new to install a game. And what was the basis of this? What were the facts stated? One was that all the games have to be installed, and really buying a game on disc is just a delivery mechanism in the Xbox One ecosystem. Buying it digital or buying it on disc have no difference. It gets installed to the hard drive and then locked to your console and account. Which is pretty much the way XBLA worked, or if you purchased any games on demand, which I think no one hardly did because those things were extremely overpriced. If you don't understand the outrage, that is why there's outrage over the used game fiasco. People go like, oh my god, Steam has the same things. Steam does not try to sell you Batman Arkham Asylum for 40 fucking bucks or 60 fucking bucks, digital download, right? That shit goes on sale. It fluctuates with the market. The console manufacturers manipulate the prices of their games. Microsoft is even far worse than this on Sony. Sony, on their digital side, seem to be doing quite well. Microsoft, on their digital side, seem to set prices at these tiers and attempt to force market pricing. So if you say, like, now we're going to take away the used game, the one place where the market has a say in what the game value may be, caveats and stars of, GameStop is not the best in that, but I'm just going to say, like, I don't know about your local, towns and everything, but GameStop is not where, I usually go for my used games. When I'm looking at used games, and granted, I'm always looking at more than just the current Xbox generation, Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3. I'm looking a little older, games too. But I'm going to McKay's, a local used books and movie store. And also there's some other, Packard's is a local company out here. We had a Game Haven. They've got a few companies around, offices through here. I'm very rarely going to GameStop because GameStop is kind of shitty. So, I'm sorry, Spot. No, Stop. Yes, GameStop. And I'm going to those very, very rarely, because they don't give you a good deal on the used, stuff. And there are several used game stores in our area, and it kind of hits like a market value of the game. It is obeying the price of the market. Now, all this shit, of course, Microsoft said and redacted, and so we don't know. We don't know, but Microsoft dug their own grave because Microsoft, people who should know, made a lot of statements, and, those turned out to be, I think Microsoft's final statement was potential scenarios they are investigating, which says your worst possible fears could be true, right? That's what that marketing message says. We are considering the worst possible thing. That's on the table, is what people hear when you say that. Not that, oh, okay, so it's not likely that you're going to actually do all these things. The other thing with used games, I think, is overlooked is used games are legal and used games are part of the market. Books and movies deal with used games. They've had, used media for years. It's always been the case. It is covered under copyright law under what's known as the first sale doctrine, meaning EA makes a copy of the game Call of Duty. Or is that Activision? I don't know. I don't give a shit about Call of Duty. Whatever. They make that game. And then they sell that game to me, right? That is the first sale. They are compensated through the retail chain. The retail chain had the first sale rights of the game, okay? So it's all worked out. Everybody's paid. Everybody's happy. But now I own that thing. And because it's a thing, I can go and sell it to my friend. I have that right, A book, a movie, a game is also a thing. It is a content item. It is words. But when I sell the thing, I no longer have it. So I didn't make a copy of it, right? I didn't duplicate it. I sold the thing. I no longer have access to the thing, and I have that right. That is given to me by copyright law. The first sale doctrine has held up in court. It has held up in court even when publishers have tried to put contracts in place to say it is not. The court case that went to the Supreme Court involved Macy's and used book sales, and the publisher wrote in the book, in the cover of the book, it was written that this book cannot be sold for less than $1. And Macy's, I believe it was Macy's, sold the book for under $1, and the Supreme Court said, first sale doctrine, bitches. They can sell it for less than $1 because you are only entitled to your first sale of the copy, No new copies have entered the marketplace, so you are fine, but you must also respect the right that somebody has made when they purchase property. So, in a sense, what they're saying is that a game and books and movies are both. They are content that has special rights for providing the content creator certain rights, but also it's a fucking chair, or it's a cup. It's a piece of physical merchandise. If someone resells a chair, no one's like, the architect of the chair needs to be compensated, okay? It doesn't work that way. And so this is kind of, how the law is written. I don't care what side you fall into it, this is what is legal. Now, in the digital universe, you may say, well, this doesn't apply. That only applies to physical things. And the funny thing is that I don't agree with that. It only applies to physical things. But in the digital universe, so far, it has not been possible for me to actually give you the thing. I can only really give you the copy of the thing. I'm actually making the copy with it. And I can actually retain the copy myself. Now, there have been some cases in the EU challenge this in the realms of where, like, a software company has gone out of business and they sold the licenses to like Oracle or something in their fire sale, and then I think it was Oracle. Some company came in, it might not have been Oracle, they basically said like, no, you only had a license to our software. You didn't buy our software. And the EU has said, nope, they bought the software, they went out of business, it had value, they could sell it to someone else, they no longer have access to the software, so they have transferred all the licensing. And in this case, it was specific license keys involved and things like that. So it's like, yes, they could sell that. So I think this is untested, unproven. But also, I think that Steam could set up a service that would be legal to allow me to resell my Steam games. Now, the second thing of why this is not an issue is, we'll go just to what Gabe says about piracy. Gabe said piracy is just a customer service problem. Used games are just a customer service problem. Okay? In fact, used games and piracy have a lot to do with each other, and they rise and fall, I think, together. Used games and piracy rise when publishers try to be dicks about things and try to extract more out of the marketplace than the market value for something. Piracy is not a problem with a lot of the Steam games because games eventually fall down in price naturally with the market, and there's sales and there's deals and there's humble bundles and there's all kinds of ways to get great deals. Plus, games can launch and set their pricing at anything that they want. So it's not every new game is $60 regardless of the money involved, the time to produce, etc. Hell, there's games that aren't even done. There's indie games. The Prison Architect game, it's up there right now for $30. That's insane, man. That's an indie game that's not even finished. And to get the alpha, you're going to pay $30 more than they are actually probably going to sell the game for. However, their idea is like, hey, we only want the true dedicated fan in our alpha, so you got to pay $30. I'm like, you know what? That makes a level of sense. And Steam is like, go ahead and do that. If that's what your thing is. We approve you to be on the platform. Price your own game however you want. They'll offer guidance, but they don't force you to price it. They allow the marketplace to interact. Because of that, I don't think there is a need for being able to sell my used games on Steam. I don't feel ripped off when I'm paying, $5 or $6 for the Batman collection, Arkham City and Arkham Asylum to sit in my account. It's like, no, it's just a couple bucks. Now, the other fear behind used games that doesn't come up a lot, and the reason I think this is a big issue, is in the console world, that console will be unsupported at some point in the future. That is a given nature of the way it will work, okay? At some point, your Xbox Live indie games are not going to work because they have always online DRM. You must be signed in to play an Xbox Live indie game, alright? Xbox One is talking about having its daily check-in, and if it shuts down the used game market and it has all this daily check-in thing, this basically means at some point when that online check-in service goes dark, which could be 10 years from now, whatever, all that is gone. You can't play those again. So it does raise the question of why invest in the platform. If you have a used game ecosystem that works outside of that, then you're like, well, I can go buy my SNES cartridges and still play them today. So all these issues are what's going on. And I think, of course, like Cliff Bleszinski and, Scott Jeffrey and all the, they post on there, I don't get this and this is stupid. And it's like, you're not listening to what's being said, and you do so at the peril of your own financial success of your products. And definitely the console manufacturers do this. Now, again, Sony has not said one way or the other what they're doing, so they could be just as bad. And they may be just as bad and lock used games down, because this might all be publisher driven. I think the right play here for both Microsoft and Sony is to say it is available on the platform, and it is a publisher choice, right? Sony, they got a lot of indies lined up on their platform. Jonathan Blow is not going to push on you always online DRM. And that's going to create more pressure on the publishers on those platforms to behave, right? Sony will kick it to the marketplace and allow consumers to vote with their wallet of like, will you buy a game, even a AAA studio game, if it's that shitty on its thing? Now, if Microsoft forces the platform and all games behind it, Microsoft has thrown their lot in. Where if the marketplace rejects that in favor of PC gaming, they could be in a bad position because that's going to be a hard thing to reverse if they've entered agreements with publishers and it's in contract of like, yes, we will always online DRM your games. So this will be interesting to see how it plays out. I would not be surprised to hear at E3 neither one of them answer this question. Okay, let's hit a few things on the tail end here. One here is this game, Paradoxical Activity. This is an interesting tale. This game was on Greenlight, and the developers, Code Avarice, they put their game on Greenlight. And they didn't put a whole lot into it because it's still kind of alpha in development, but you got to have a green light page and you got to get it going if you have any hope of, getting on there, and every vote counts and things like that, which, by the way, I think the last leaked information I heard was 60,000 votes are needed to get into the top 5 green light games. So it's still pretty bad in green light. However, I don't give credence to all the developer whining on it because Valve is still actively tweaking this system and stated that they are. So I don't think, I think, you still got to give them time to figure it out because no one has figured this out before, and give Valve some credit for being the ones that are putting the effort into trying. So what happened with their game, though, is on Greenlight, and they're doing it, and Adult Swim Publishing catches an eye and says, hey, we would like to publish your game and, put you on the Adult Swim. And also, fuck this Greenlight thing. We're a Valve pre-approved Greenlight publisher, meaning we can bring games to Greenlight with not a lot of hassle, and we'll just get you on Greenlight. And then Valve rejected them from being on Greenlight, right? So then they signed a contract with Adult Swim Games, and then Adult Swim Games went to go, shut down your Greenlight page, and then we're going to go put you on the platform. And then Steam said, we reject Paradoxical Activity because we do not want it seen that indies can get around Greenlight by signing with a publisher, which is pretty fucked up because getting signed with a publisher, again, a pre-approved Valve publisher, one that says like, yes, we're a pre-approved publisher, we get games on quite easily. This is a reputable publisher now. It's not fucking easy. And it's kind of a vote in quality, and I don't see where the harm is here if publishers start going to Greenlight and trolling through them and finding the ones that are overlooked and the ones that just don't have their marketing down to get their fan base in action, or grow their fan base or spam the shit all weekend long on Facebook and Twitter to get votes in the Greenlight system. If they find them and they say, hey, we're going to take a cut, of course, you do give up some rights, you might be giving up IP, but we're going to get you on Greenlight, and that to be an option. That seems like a good, healthy use of Greenlight. You know, if publishers are going through here looking, you know, it just becomes a marketplace of self-publishing indies and also indies and publishers. This seems like a good thing. I don't see the downside to it. And there is a long video now of about 30 minutes that you can listen to, interview with the developers and talking about their company and what they've gone through. And there's a little entitlement behind their words, which I always hate hearing, because, you know, you have to understand, you're not entitled to shit, okay? You're entitled to build your game. That's it. No one is entitled to publish. You're not entitled to have anyone publish it on any platform. Valve doesn't owe you shit. And I hate that attitude from indies, you know. At the same time, you know, you should push back and challenge Valve where they're fair. But they do kind of go into the realities of de jure and good old games, and none of these hold a candle to the revenue that you get when you're on Steam. But I think this will be interesting to see where this goes from here. I don't know if there's more to the story not being revealed, but so far Valve has not commented anywhere, so, you know, if only one side's talking, then they're going to dictate the terms. You know, I hope the game looks pretty interesting. I hope the Greenlight thing worked out for them all in the long run. But that's kind of just a little shitty thing to know that that would happen. Also, know that if you're talking with a publisher in the interim, and then you're entertaining that thing, and they do tell you that they're going to get the green light for you, make sure, and it sounded like these guys did have this clause, make sure that is in the contract explicitly, so that if that fails for whatever reason, you know, you can reevaluate the contract. Because really, if they're not getting you into Steam, there's not a lot the publisher might be offering you, okay, in terms of what you're giving up for the game. And then also, you know, make sure you can back away in that contract if they can't get in there. And if that's what you're looking at, it sounds like for the interim, stay off of Greenlight. If you think there's a possibility, shop your game around, but don't put it on Greenlight until Valve either revises this policy, clarifies it more, or pulls it back. And hopefully they'll pull it back. You know, hopefully some press will float around on this and they will pull it back some. I think it's worth note. I just want to give a shout out here and mention, not really a shout out, but I'm going to mention that Double Fine has a second Kickstarter up. Sad to see, you know, Giant Bombs, Patrick Klepek, and some other mainstream gaming press going, oh my god, how dare they ask for money on Kickstarter when they haven't shipped their prior game. And what's sad is these guys are supposed to be the ones who understand how the industry works. These are the ones that are supposed to understand that there are 3 teams that do 3 games at the same time at Double Fine, and one team just finished up The Cave and got off of porting their game to PC, the Brutal Legend. They got done porting the Brutal Legend game to PC, and there is an excellent Polygon article. Props to Polygon. I really like Polygon, by the way. Let me get to the Polygon Double Fine Massive Chalice over here so I don't forget to link to it. They have a great article that goes behind the scenes here, which again, Patrick Klepek, you're supposed to be a fucking journalist. You should have asked questions, not tweeted assumptions. Yeah, he goes on the Ben Kuchara list of just butthurt without reason. There's a great interview on here, actually done before they launch, talking about how they have the idea, this is a great game, this is new IP, and they're talking to publishers and they're shopping it around, and, you know, if they go to publishers and you give up IP, right, it's like they can't release sequels to a lot of their games. They can't do another Iron Brigade. They don't own the IP. You know, they say that in the Kickstarter video. And, you know, Tim Schafer has said, you know, like, Notch makes more money than they do because he owns his IP. That turns out to be the secret. And they were really successful coming out and kickstarting the Double Fine adventure game, which was kind of like no publisher would have published that, right? That was part of the point of, is there a market for this type of game? Because no publisher will touch it, and they all say it's dead, so it has to be community funded or it won't go forward. And the initial thing was like, you may just get a game done by Tim Schafer. No team involved. But the funding it got brought it to a full level thing. Polygon has this excellent article of talking about this behind the scenes where they were discussing this and discussing with publishers, and it's like, do we really want to go this route? And we really don't. We really like the crowd model. We really like the fan base and working with our fans and cutting out all the bullshit, because the publisher is a barrier between you and your fans that you have to appease, even though it's not good for you and it's not good for the fans. They want to cut that out. But they actually talked to running a Kickstarter without having shipped their prior game. And also, this is a new IP. This isn't a nostalgia play, right? And would it work? Well, at the time that I'm recording this, which they've been up for about a day, I think, they have $600,000 of their $725,000 goal. So, yes, it works. They will be funded. And they do talk about a huge risk, because it sounds like they could have lined up a publisher for this, or might have been in talks with one and walked away at the last minute to kickstart it, meaning if it fails, they probably not only walked away from a deal, but they probably won't be able to get as good a deal if they go back, because now they have a failed Kickstarter on this idea. But they took the gamble and they win, and I think it's a great thing. And no, I don't think there's anything wrong in this, because they are clear in their video. I mean, Tim Schafer appears in chained. It's hilarious. He appears chained to his desk working on the Double Fine adventure game, because that's what his mission is, and explaining that, yes, but there's another team, and, you know, Brad Muir is going to head this up. Come on, guys. Fucking Brad Muir. Let Brad Muir do a game where he's answering to fans instead of publishers. Let this guy is a good game designer, and, you know, full disclosure, I backed it, because it's Brad fucking Muir. And if Brad Muir gets on there and says, I have an idea for a game, if Tim Schafer gets on there and says, I have an idea for a game that I want to make, Peter Molyneux says, here's a game that I want to make without any publisher strings attached, it's just the shit that's in my head, you know, I'm going to give these guys money. These guys are proven game designers. Whether or not you like their recent games, whether or not you think they were successful at one time, that may be true. They may have lost touch, or they may have just gotten bogged down by the grind of the publisher system and allowing them their freedom to go back to when it used to just be them and their own ideas. They made better calls by their own intuition than publishers and their stats, and I am happy to give all of these guys that do these giant Kickstarters. If I know your name, Brian Fargo, you know, it's like, yes, here you go, dude. Here's $20. Give me a game. I don't care what it is. I am happy to play that. I'm happy to pay for and play for your game. And also, many of these come with like, hey, we're going to give you behind the scenes. We're going to give you how we put it together. And that's interesting as a game designer. So I don't see anything about that is wrong. All right, guys, we're about at an hour mark, and I want to wrap up and keep this to an hour-ish podcast. One last thing, book recommendation. I finished reading Gender Inclusive Game Design. This is a must-read book. Not even because it's on my soapbox topic of, you know, women in games, and yes, you should be watching the tropes versus video games video. The second one just went up. You should be watching those if you're not, and I think there's a lot of good useful things to learn at that. And I believe that you need to watch those not through the lens of a gamer, but through the lens of a game designer, and go, shit, we're lazy. Game designs have been lazy. Game design needs to think more. So not only is this book good for understanding the issues that limit your game by gender. I've said this time and time again. A game that is inclusive to all genders is just a better fucking game for everyone. It doesn't become a worse game for your 18 to 24 male demographic. When you read this book, every time that they talk about, here is a traditional, here is a common way of approaching game design, and here's how it excludes females from the game, or here's how the mind psyche works, or here's the things that they're when they talk about how to fix it, how to address it, and they do talk about that every step of the way. They offer the solution. They don't just outline the problem. They offer the solution. When you read the solution, it's a better game design. Yeah, that actually sounds more like the game I want to play. And the changes in most instances are small. So once again, gender inclusive game design, you'll have to look around, and the funny thing is, it's like this book was published, Garner Ray, Sherry Garner Ray, is the author. This book was published like in 2002. So there is some really, prophecy moments where they start talking about 2004. Before the iPhone, it's amazing how well this book nailed the mobile market. Basically, there's a part in here of like, this mobile market's going to explode. Phones are going to get better, and the mobile market's going to explode. And the people who make games that appeal to a wide market are going to own that platform, because just as many women are running around with smartphones as men. It's not a male-dominated thing like, the consoles are, which may be a self-fulfilling prophecy, but the consoles, for whatever reason, and hardcore PC gamers, even, to a lesser extent, is male-dominated. But they're like, phones are not male-dominated, and if you try to go into it with a male-dominated game design attitude, you're going to lose that market, because the people who understand the market are going to win, and win big. And it's amazing how well this book called it. This is one of my top books on game design I have ever read. I am really enjoying it, and I cannot recommend it enough. So, all right, everyone, I am about to head out here. I want to thank you for listening to the audio podcast or watching this on YouTube, if that's how you choose to do it. And until you see me next, which I don't know when that will be, remember, if it doesn't ship, it doesn't count.